What's going on, everyone? This is Ben from VGBlaster, and I'm back again with another deck profile. Today, I don't know why I put these face down every time, you've read the description, you're here to see a deck profile for Athora. This is my Star Dragon World Prism Dragon build. This is obviously using the new stuff from Buddy Legends, and by new stuff I mean this card specifically. This is Ardent Heavenly Crystal Dragon Athora Alexander, and this deck is going to be focused around this card as the focus. So it is going to be the Buddy for the deck. So jumping straight in, since it's the focus, we're going to run 4 copies. Core cost, I'll put this card, put the top card of your deck into this card's soul and pay 3 gauge. This card on the field cannot be destroyed and you cannot be dealt damage by card effects. So that's penetrate, impacts, anything like that. As long as this is out, you just do not take the damage. It's not nullified, it's not reduced. So it gets over stuff that says it can't be nullified or reduced, obviously. Counteract, during your attack phase, if this card is on your center, rest another Prism Dragon on your field. If you do, stand this card and put the top card of your deck into this card's soul. And then this card has penetrate and soul guard naturally. So obviously, you call this out. You could have, if you have a size 0 either on both sides and then an item equipped, because your item is a Prism Dragon as well, you can attack. Well, let's just let me get the stuff out just to show you. So say you have like 2 size 0s and your item. So you just go attack, top card of the deck into, attack, rest, stand, top card of the deck into the soul, attack, rest, stand, same again, top card, attack, rest, stand, attack. 4 attacks, 12 crit, and you've rested cards that wouldn't be doing much anyway to your opponent because all your size 0s are pretty much paper thin, have 1 crit, whereas Athora has 3. So you're really putting in the damage. Really, you've then put 3 extra cards into its soul, really help build up the defense, making it really easy to defend on your turn, making it really hard for your opponent to break through your center to actually do any damage to you. So yeah, this deck is focused around getting this card out, not as soon as possible. Usually you can go into Overturn Athora first, use the Overturn straight away, burn some life from your opponent, and then go into this and just go straight for finishing them. So yeah, Alexander is a really solid card. It's nice for Prisms to be aggro for once instead of just being pure defensive, because usually they just purely try and burn your opponent down. But yeah, I really enjoy Alexander. It's a really fun card, a really fun deck to play with. Next, I run 3 copies of Aldo Athora. I do only have 3 copies. I consider running this at 4, but you obviously do have the Prism Dragon Searcher. You do go through your deck quite a lot with other spells. So I feel like 3 is enough to a degree. It can upset consistency. If you want to bump it up to 4, bump it up to 4, that's fine. Core cost, I'll put the top card of your deck into this card's soul and pay 3 gauge. This card on the field cannot be destroyed and you cannot be dealt damage by card effects, same again. Overturn, pay 1 gauge and discard a card from your hand. When your opponent's cards would attack, for this turn, this card cannot be destroyed. All cards on your opponent's field must keep attacking alone if able, and when they do, change the target of the attack to this card and deal 1 damage to your opponent. So obviously this is good. You just set it down as soon as your opponent decides, right, I'm going to try and attack it, declare overturn, and then they have to just, whatever they've got, if they've got double attack it forces it, anything like that. If they try and be smart and link attack you to begin with, that's still actually, the confirmed ruling is that still burns them for 2. It's considered only 1 attack, so for Prismatic Blessing it is only 1 attack, but in terms of damage dealt to your opponent, it's 2. 1 for each card that is attacking, even though it's technically 1 attack. So yeah, this also has double attack and soul guard. So yeah, once again, if you can, usually want to get into this first, sit it in the center. As soon as your opponent attacks, even if they're only going to have 2 or 3 attacks, just burning that bit of life to then go into your Alexander next turn really puts that bit of pressure on your opponent. Forces the attack, basically wastes their turn as well. So if they see it out there, they might not call something big out, or they will, and they'll just know they're going to have to tank the overturn. So yeah, Alexander is really good for that reason. Next, I run 2 copies of Providence Crystal Dragon Athora Adamant. Core cost, I'll put this card on top of a size 3 Prism Dragon on your field and put the top card of your deck into this card's soul and pay 2 gauge. All cards on the field cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects, and you cannot be dealt damage by any card effects. Damage dealt to your opponent by your card effects cannot be reduced. So counteract, during your Opponent's turn, call this card from your hand by paying its core cost, double attack, soul guard, and counter attack. So this card's really good because obviously you can call it during your opponent's turn on top of, say you have an Alexander with a big soul, and your opponent has some kind of like damage reducing card on board, and you want to impact them to death. You can go quickly call this on top. You're probably not going to get over it because it's probably going to have a lot of soul. If you have the item out, its defense is pretty pumped. It also has counter attacks, so anything that has double attack that can be destroyed is going to get destroyed. So yeah, and then obviously you can kill them with the impact. If you declare overturn, I believe you can actually then call this card on top, and then they still, so if they have like something that reduces damage by 1, declare overturn in counter to the first attack. You're gonna have to, the first attack is going to technically bounce, but then you can call Alexander over and it keeps going on, although this card will be destroyed by the attacks because it doesn't have, I think the overturn only gives Aldo that effect. But yeah, I'm sure that's how it works. I think I've seen that play before, but don't quote me on that. I will probably try and look that up first. But yeah, it's multiple reasons. Or if you just basically don't want your opponent to clear your center, if you know you can impact them, but they're going to have more attacks than you have soul, call it out, get an extra soul from the core cost. They don't break your center, you then impact them to death. So yeah. 1 copy of Rainbow Gem Crystal Dragon Krishgeist. 1 copy I think is fine. Obviously you have the Searcher, as I said. This is a very situational card. He can be very good, especially if your opponent's at quite high life and you really want to kind of kill them with the impact, especially if you have the shoes equipped, because pretty much your opponent is dead if they have 8 life or less. So this card is core cost. So put the top card of your deck into this card's soul and pay for a gauge. This card on your field cannot be destroyed nor returned to hand by your opponent's card effects. At the beginning of your opponent's final phase, destroy up to 2 cards in your opponent's field, draw cards, and deal damage to your opponent equal to the number of cards destroyed. So usually you destroy 2 cards, draw 2 cards, deal 2 damage to your opponent. You have the shoes out that deal 2 damage. That's another 2, that's 4. Then if you have the impact, that's another 4. As I said, if they have 8, they're pretty much dead. This card also has double attack and soul guard. There's plenty of ways to keep this card in the field. A sterism effect is usually your main effect. But yeah, I like this card too much to take it out. If you want to make this into your 4th Aldo or into another Adamant to make sure you get them in your hand to use them, you can do. But yeah, I quite like this as a one-off. Finally, for size 3s, technically, we run 2 copies of Jade Gem Crystal Dragon Schwarterize. Don't know how you say that. But anyway, core cost of put the top card of your deck into this card's soul and pay 1 gauge. If you have an originally size 3 Prism Dragon on your center, the size of this card on your left or right is reduced by 3. At the end of battle, the Prism monster on your field was attacked, deal 1 damage to your opponent. This ability only activates once per turn, and it has Soul Guard. So obviously this is, you've already put in so much pressure on your opponent for your attacks. Burning that life down as well is really, really good. So you just call this out. If you're somehow lucky enough to get both of them out, they're not named effects, so they both activate once per turn, but they will both activate. So you have your Alexander in the center, you have these 2 out, your Alexander swings for loads, your opponent's now down to like 2 life or whatever, and then it's just like, well, if you attack me, you're dead. So yeah, that's why this card's quite good. It's low core cost. If you're really struggling and you need a Prism in your center for some card abilities, such as enhancement, stuff like that, it's a low core cost to slap it in the center and then get your gauge and draw, hopefully get into what you need. So yeah, obviously it's pretty pitiful stats as well, 616, so it is just there to be rest to restand your Alexander. Okay, next we run quite a few size 0s to take advantage of, to optimise the chance of getting into him, get Alexander's draw effect. So we run 4 copies of White Crystal Dragon Rizzling. When this card enters the field, if you have a size 3 Prism Dragon on your centre, draw a card. So once again, this is another reason why we run this as well, just for a bit of consistency. So this is once per turn. If you have multiple, you get multiple draws. So yeah, it just helps you cycle through your deck. This is the one problem with this deck, you are at risk of deck out, so be very careful with how much you are drawing, because obviously your Alexander burns through your deck as well. You also gauge charge a lot, you get a lot of searching. So I think this deck's only like 51 cards. I'll probably bump that up maybe by adding some more in. Like I said, if you add another Aldo in, you can just add it straight in to build up your numbers. But I do think that hurts consistency, and I do think you can kill your opponent quite quickly, so that kind of balances out the risk of you decking out. But especially if against something like Black Dragons that are going to stall you out, yeah, you really need to be careful how much you mill. But yeah, anyway, 4 copies of Rizzling, help you draw, help you get stuff that you need, helps build your hand up, search defense spells if you really need them, search your impact out. Next, 2 copies of Red Crystal Dragon Nimue, I think. When this card enters the field, you may call a size 0 Prism Dragon monster other than itself from your drop zone by paying its core cost. So that's obviously to be combined with Rizzling or the next size 0 we're going to go into. Let's call it out, get your Rizzling out, get a draw, get your Sheldry out, search for a defense card. Also, it's just, regardless of it getting the effect off that call, you're getting an extra card, which means more attacks on your Alexander. So yeah, 2 copies is good because it doesn't do anything kind of past that, and once it hits the field it's dead, obviously, as with most size 0s, but it is just really good for helping build that field up. Even if you already have a full field, your other size 0s have on call effects, so it means you just get them off. So, as I said, we run 2 copies of Flying Crystal Dragon Sheldry. When this card enters the field, you may discard a card from your hand. If you do, search for 1 defense from your deck, put it into your hand and shuffle your deck. So most of our spells, to a degree, are defense. Your item is defense, and things like your set spell. So this really helps you find what you need in tight situations. You know, do you need facial change, do you need a sterism effect, do you need your item, anything like that. Sheldry just helps you search it out. And once again, obviously it's really easy just to get this out. You can use it, obviously just call it out, or use your Red Crystal Dragon. So yeah, so that'll do for monsters. Next, for spells, we'll run 4 copies of Gemologist, obviously. You may only cast this if you have 6 life or more. Put the top card of your deck into your gauge, and then put 1 size 3 Prism Dragon from your deck into your hand, and shuffle your deck. You may only cast Gemologist once per turn. This is such a solid card. This is a staple for Prism Dragons. You need to be running it at 4 because consistency is usually their only issue. Gets you extra gauge, which you need. Your Prism Dragons have quite a high gauge cost. If you cast this, search the Athora you want. If you've obviously gone first, you charge and draw and gone to this, cast it, you're now at 4 gauge. Your Athora's a 3, so you still have the extra gauge to call your item out or to use the overturn, Aldo's overturn. Because that's also 1 gauge, so you just get it out, then you're still set to do the overturn. Because sometimes I've seen people where they've got Athora out just and they're like, oh, thank God I got it out, and then realised, oh wait, I have no gauge, can't do the overturn. It's really upsetting. So yeah, always be careful of that, always manage your gauge wisely. But yeah, Gemologist is an absolute staple. Next, 3 copies of Prismatic Bless. This is your Prism Dragon version of Bat's X-Link. You may only cast this card during your opponent's turn. Counter, look at cards from the top of your deck equal to the number of times your opponent's cards have attacked this turn. Put a card from among them into your gauge, put 2 cards from among them into your hand, and put the rest on the bottom of the deck in any order, and you gain 1 life. You may only cast Prismatic Bless once per turn. So obviously, if you use the overturn, you're going to force quite a few attacks, so then you can just cast Prismatic Bless at the end of your opponent's turn. Your Adamant Athora usually has a load of soul, so your opponent's going to have to attack a lot of times to get over it. Prismatic Bless is good for that. If you're really desperate, you know, you're sat at something that has not very much soul, to get the full effect, you can just wait until your opponent does 3 attacks. At the end of the 3rd attack, cast Prismatic Bless, look at the top 3, 1 to gauge, 2 to hand, gain that life back. Then you might get into a defense card that you really need. You might even draw into like something like a Sterism effect and use that ability to survive the turn. So yeah, Prismatic Bless very good for multiple reasons. You're usually pretty safe once you get an Athora out, so even if your opponent doing multiple attacks, you're going to be alright, and this just helps you build your hand back up and get a bit of life back. 2 copies of Enhancement. Put the top card of your deck into your gauge, and if there is a size 3 Prism Dragon monster on your centre, draw a card. So you're guaranteed the gauge if you really need it, and then usually you do have a size 3 Prism Dragon in the centre, so you're going to get an extra card. Obviously, you do need the card for that draw, so for that reason we run that at 2, and 2 copies Starjack Boost. You only cast this card if you have 7 life or more, put the top card of your deck into your gauge and draw a card. You can only cast Starjack Boost once per turn. So if you want to run either of these at 4 or mess around with these numbers or just add more in general, as I said, build the numbers of your deck up. These are probably the cards to do it with, because obviously they get you the gauge and draw. Starjack Boost, they both have the caveat of obviously for this, to get its full effect you need a Prism Dragon out. For this full effect you need 7 life or more. Usually, I mean ideally, you're only going to be dealt damage if your opponent goes first, or if you're having a really bad day with the deck. So usually 7 life or more is fine, but after that it becomes a dead card, so you've got to be careful with Starjack Boost. But you can just get it opening hand, and then cast it, get the gauge in the draw, get your engine going, get into what you need. Next, 2 copies of Mirror's Valley. Now I was never the biggest fan of Mirror's Valley, but in this build it's amazing. It's a set spell. All Prism Dragon monsters on your field cannot be destroyed, return to the hand, or put in any other areas by card effect. That's very important because your Alexander has to be in the centre for its ability. There are a few cards, especially Darkness Dragon World, that can move cards around, so you don't want that to happen. Mirror Valley stops that. It also stops bouncing. Bouncing is really annoying, especially if you're on Aldo Athora, because if goddamn that Katana World card in Thunder Empire, they come multiple down, they can bounce. Yeah, Aldo just straight back to your hand, so then they don't have to worry about the overturn. So this stops it. Most of them can't be destroyed anyway, but it stops your opponent popping your side monsters. And your item, oh no, sorry, it just states all Prism Dragon monsters. So yeah, it just stops your opponent from popping your side monsters by effect or attacking them in general, because the second effect is when your opponent's card attack, change the target of the attack to the Prism Dragon on your centre. So they have to attack your centre monster. As I said, if you sat on Alexander in the centre, they have to attack it. It's got a huge soul. So it creates a bit of a problem for your opponent. It makes sure your left and right, size 0 survive. So they're still there to be rested next turn for more attacks. So yeah, Mirror's Valley is very good in this. It's also, once again, it's a defense, so it's searchable from Sheldry. Next, 4 copies of Brush Upper. You may only cast this card if there's a Prism Dragon on your centre. Counter, choose a Prism Dragon on your field. During this turn, the next time that card will be destroyed, that card remains on the field. Then if you have 6 life or more, put the top card of your deck into your gauge. So once again, this is just to help destruction prevention, keeps your Alexander on the field longer. Get to an extra gauge if you're above the 6 life, which you usually are. Solid card, really good for defense. It's your main Prism Dragon defense spell. Next, 2 copies of a Sterism effect. Isn't as important in this build as it was in the previous version. I know I never made a deck video for the previous version, but it was really good in the old one, especially in combination with Krishgeist. But now it is just still a very useful card, so I'd still suggest running it. But I find 2 is more of a better number. It's a defense card, so it's searchable from Sheldry once again. You may only cast this card if you have a Prism Dragon on your field. Cast cost, discard 2 cards from your hand. Counter, choose and use one of the following 2. For this turn, all monsters on your field cannot be destroyed. That's by anything, attack, anything like that. And because they can't be destroyed, you can't be dealt penetrate damage, anything like that. They just outright can't be. It's not, it nullifies destruction, they can't be destroyed. So your opponent can swing at you all they want, it's not going to do anything. Or until the beginning of your opponent's next turn, you cannot lose the game. So the game continues if your life becomes 0 or your deck is empty. So that's once again useful if you feel like you're going to deck out. You can cast it, and then the beginning of your opponent's next turn, I believe it says. So if you look at your deck and go, oh god, I'm going to draw deck out, you can cast it, and then you have 1 more turn to go at your opponent. There's no ways of recycling your deck. If you hit 0 life when you cast this, you can obviously use Prismatic Bless, gain 1 life back, because you can't go lower than 0, so worst case scenario, you're going to be at 0 at the end of your opponent's turn. Cast Prismatic Bless, gain 1 life, you can then still, even if you don't finish your opponent, you can still have the chance to get something out and survive, because at the beginning of your opponent's phase, you're back at 1 life, you're still in the game. But a lot of the time, this is used for the first effect of cards on your field can't be destroyed. It just kills your opponent's turn, so they can't do anything to you. If you've got the impact in hand, it essentially means they're deaf. Obviously, if you can afford to drop 2 cards and still have the impact in hand, they can't destroy anything, so they go, right, end the turn. It's like, oh, well, final phase, you're dead. So, yeah, a Sterism effect, really, really good. Once again, if you have Krishgeist out, it's really good as well for burning the life. Or the item as well, because the item needs you to still have Prison Dragon monster on your field at the end of their turn. Next, 4 copies of Phase Seal Chains. You may only cast this card at the end of the 3rd battle of your opponent's attack phase. Counter, end the attack phase. Really, really solid. Once again, your Alexand is going to, if you've used the full effect, it's going to have at least 4 soul. So the attack it 3 times, end your opponent's turn, and then you still sat with 1 soul on your Alexand. Go at your opponent again. If you've got Mirror's Valley out, they definitely have only attacked the Alexand. So yeah, it's hard enough to get over with to begin with, and then with just ending your opponent's battle phase, really, really good. Really, it's just such a headache for your opponent to deal with. It is just like the bashing the head against a wall. So finally for spells, I run 2 copies of Heavenly Crystal Awakening. As I said, ideally, you go into Aldo first, use the overturn as early as possible, and then the game is just aggroing your opponent to death. This just helps. If you've cast overturn during the turn, counter, put the top 3 cards of your deck into your gauge, draw 3 cards. You may only cast this once per game, so you don't want to run it really at more than 2. You can run it at 3 once again if you want to bump numbers in and just securely get into it, but then again it becomes a dead card. But then again you can just ditch that for a sterism effect, as I said, because it is dead. So yeah, put the top 3 cards of your deck into your gauge, draw 3 cards is really solid. Once again, it's sensible that it's only once per game, because otherwise it would be dumb. But once again, that's 6 cards out of your deck, which really doesn't help the deck out situation, so be careful when using this. But it really does, if, like I said, you go into the overturn, you do it, obviously you paid quite a bit, you paid 4 gauge to get your Aldo out, and then use the overturn, so this gets that gauge back, ready for you just to call on Alexand next turn, and then just builds your hand cards up as well. For items, we will run 4 copies of Crystal Crescent Gleaves. A quick cost of put a Prison Dragon from your drop zone into this card's soul, pay 1 gauge of 1 life. Abilities of all Prison Dragon monsters on your field cannot be nullified, and they get plus 2000 attack and defense. This ability cannot be nullified. At the beginning of your opponent's final phase, if you have a Prison Dragon on your center, deal 2 damage to your opponent. So yeah, that's quite crazy. Once again, you put in usually 12 crit at your opponent every turn, penetrate. If that doesn't kill them, 2 damage. If that doesn't kill them, 4 damage. So yeah, Crystal Gleaves are really good. Also, it has Soul Guard itself, so if you like don't have Mirror Valley set, you need to destroy it twice to actually get rid of it. Also the effect of all the abilities of all Prison Dragon monsters in your field cannot be nullified, and this cannot be nullified. So it's a Prison Dragon as well, so its own ability can't be nullified. Oh no, sorry, it says monster. And then that can't be nullified. So yeah, I'm not sure. I feel like in terms of play with against Miseria, Overturn Miseria, if they cast it, so that ability can't be nullified, so your Athora keeps its Soul Guard. So when they try and return it to deck, if I remember rightly, obviously this will go back because it's only Prison Dragon monsters. But because that ability is not nullified, that isn't, if you get what I mean. So when they try and return it to deck, it still has its Soul Guard, so you just go, well, it only loses 1 soul, and then you still have your Athora sat in the centre, so that's really good. Also, once again, if you're getting stuff like Style of Justice, anything like that, they can't just nullify your Soul Guard and run through your Athora. It's really helpful. Once again, it makes it really a big pain for your opponent to deal with. And finally, for impacts, I have 2 Cristiano Crystal Shoot. I thought I had 3. I'd probably suggest running it at 3 actually. Yeah, must have 2. But yeah, 2 is fine. I do seem to hit it quite a bit, but 3 might be a good number as well. I prefer this to Dynamic Overhead, just because you can, this works a lot better with stuff like a Sterism effect, because usually when you cast that, your opponent's just going to go, well, I'll just end my turn, and then obviously Overhead relies on your opponent doing a lot of attacks. Obviously it can put more damage in, but it's also 4 gauge, and this is only 2, which is much easier to get into. After you've like called your Alexand out, you can get some other stuff just to get you that 2 gauge up. Obviously things like Brush Upper, Enhancement, stuff like that. So yeah, you only cast this card during your opponent's final phase if you did not take damage during your opponent's turn, which you usually don't, and you have a Prison Dragon on your centre, and your opponent has 4 life or less. Pay 2 gauge, deal 4 damage to your opponent. This card cannot be nullified, the damage cannot be reduced. If your opponent's life would become 0, it cannot be changed by your opponent's card effects. so unrevivable. So you can't dry. No one runs any of those old spells that used to be like mill a card if it's a spell, gain 2 life. Things like Burn Nova, anything like that, they just style of retaliation. They just can't do it. They can't come back. So once they hit 0, that's game. So yeah, once again, this is only 2 gauge. This is a really low gauge cost for how good of a card it is. Really, really, really easy to burn your opponent down to 4 with Alexander. So yeah, this card's pretty much a given. Once again, if you have shoes out, you're essentially dealing 6 damage to your opponent. So the shoes obviously activate at the beginning of the final phase, and then you can just activate this in response. If the shoes burn him down to 4, 2 gauge to kill him. So really good. So yes, that has been it for this deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions, ask me in the comments. Any suggestions you have, any cards I don't run. I haven't the sideboard's hit and miss with this deck. You definitely want to run things like Antimatter Cloud for the mirror match, stuff like that. Colloid Armor is also good. It's pay 1 gauge for this turn. A Prism Dragon monster on your field can attack your opponent even if they have a card in the centre. So that's really good sideboard against something like Chaos, because if they set Sunken Seabed Ruin, any effect damage of 3 or above is nullified to 0. So if you just cast this and you're like, well, I'm not dealing effect damage to you now, I'm attacking you directly. So yeah, really good for stuff like that. The other point with Alexander, obviously, is if you're against Chaos, is it can't, even if the shoes, it only goes up to 9k. So, and Infinity Chaos has 10. So there are certain, I think Aldo Ground as well could be a good card to put in the deck. Like I said, even if you just put it in, because I believe that gives 1000 power and defense. So yeah, there are other cards to consider that you can just put in the deck or put in the sideboard. Anything like that. Yeah, I'll leave it there. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video. As I said, if you have any suggestions or anything like that, leave them in the comments. I do try and I definitely read everything. I definitely try and reply to everything as well. Like and subscribe if you did enjoy this video. Hit notifications. There's going to be more deck profiles coming for all this new stuff. And of course, I'm going to try and get some games filmed very soon for you guys. So hope you have enjoyed. This has been Ben from VGBlaster, and I'll see you guys very soon. Bye.